edition of The Day Another Live. I am your host, Geraldine Anello, and today I am here with Patrick Sulken. Hey, Patrick.
Hi, Geraldine. How are you?
I'm so good. How is it going?
It's going well. What a crazy time we're in.
Indeed. I am so excited to have you on board. For all of you who do not know Patrick Sulken, he is just, the word comes and it's a cheesy word, but I don't know what word describes you better than this. A sweetheart of a music director.
Oh.
I was lucky enough. First of all, Patrick Sulken was the associate music director and then the music director of Pretty Woman, the musical on Broadway, but also, and I know him best as my boss, because he was the music supervisor of We Are the Tigers, a super awesome horror musical written by the wonderful Preston Allen. And he was music supervisor. I was music director. So I got to spend a lot of time next to him. And here's a little story that I just love, which is Patrick has this kind of personality that gets everyone to feel so good that when he's not around, and anyone, no matter who it is in the crew, the cast, or the musicians, anyone who mentions Patrick's name, somebody will be like, "Oh, Patrick." And that's the Patrick effect. So that's why I love him. So we're so happy to have you here. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. I was working on a show at the La Jolla Playhouse in California called Fly. I was the associate music director there and had just taken over as the conductor. We did 2 performances, and then obviously all theater was put on pause for now. So as I had a subletter in my New York City apartment, I made a detour to where my parents are in rural Ohio, and have been here kind of waiting out the storm for a little bit.
What is Fly about?
Fly is a retelling of the Peter Pan story, told through Wendy's point of view, with amazing new pop music by Bill Sherman, lyrics by Kirsten Childs of The Bubbly Black Girl Sheds Her Chameleon Skin, and a book by Rajiv Joseph, who is primarily a playwright, lost the Pulitzer for Bengal Tiger at the Baghdad Zoo. It premiered at the Dallas Theater Center 6 or 7 years ago, got put on a shelf while everybody got very famous. Bill became the music supervisor of Sesame Street. The Pulitzer thing happened for Rajiv. Jeffrey Seller, the director, became the producer of a little musical called Hamilton. So everyone kind of went away, got better at what they did. They decided to try it again. There were things that they hadn't worked out at the Dallas Theater Center. So they did it at the La Jolla Playhouse. And we opened and then closed.
Sorry about that. But what are your response? I am assuming that it will come back and do again. So I'm going to talk about it like that's the case. What are your responsibilities with it?
So I actually have been with it since its regeneration. Will Van Dyke, who was the music director supervisor of Pretty Woman, is also the music supervisor of Fly. So he did all of the orchestrations, all of the arrangements. And it was a pretty small music team, just Will, myself, Bill the composer, and Mason Ingram, the drummer, Ableton programmer, and a music assistant. So I did a lot of music teaching during the workshop process, and also during the workshop process over the last 2 years, became the de facto copyist, music assistant. Geraldine, as you know, the staffs are usually pretty pared down for those experiences. So any note that needed to be put on a page, I was putting on the page, handing out to actors, making revisions. That's just like the paper flies and flies and flies.
Woo!
And then when we went into production at La Jolla, I did a lot of music teaching, playing for dance rehearsals, playing for flying rehearsals.
Flying rehearsal. Go on.
oh yes. As it's a Peter Pan story, Flying by Foy was pretty heavily involved. So I think 2 or 3 weeks into the process, they would break off actors to go into the theater to dry tech them into their flight patterns, which, just like any other piece of automation machinery, is very slow and meticulous, but more so because there are human beings inside of a piece of machinery being controlled by a computer. So that has to be pretty directly timed to click and to Ableton and to the music.
Wait, hold up. Are you saying that the Ableton controls the automation?
No.
Oh, I mean, like Ableton has never been so risky.
No. Thank goodness. Almost even a little less intuitive. The flying automation was run by a different computer than the set automation, run by a different computer than the Ableton, which sometimes triggered SMPTE for lights and sound. So 3 different computers firing at the same time makes for a pretty intense technical process.
But wasn't there one computer triggering the 3 computers?
No, there was one stage manager, old school, just calling and making sure her respective technicians were on it.
Oh my goodness. So was Ableton triggered by anyone in the band?
It was triggered by Mason, the drummer.
But that person was not launched by the stage manager. So the
Correct.
stage manager was taking it off of
music and
off
counts.
of the so fun theater, live theater.
Yes.
Keeping you on your toes.
Yeah. In fact, we went through our first 4 or 5. Our first 3 performances had a technical stop, which was the first time that had ever happened on a show that I had worked on. We had one clean show, one more stop show, and then we ran okay for the rest of the run.
Wow. Now talk to me about Pretty Woman. How did you get involved? How was that experience?
I actually started with Pretty Woman at the very first reading. I knew Will Van Dyke, the music director, just kind of around New York City, and I had audited at Kinky Boots, and he was looking for someone to serve as associate music director, but for that very first reading, it was really kind of more of a music associate job. Only Act 1 was written, and Gary Marshall, who is no longer with us, was still alive for the very first reading. Gary Marshall, who directed the film, J.F. Lawton, who wrote the book for the film, wrote the script for the show, and then Brian Adams and Jim Valance of Summer of '69 and Heaven and Canadian rock star fame were writing the songs. And that first week was truly just around the table. It was just Act 1. And then for 2 full years, about every 6 months, a different part of the workshop process happened and then kind of expanded. So after that 1 week Act 1 reading, about 6 months later, there was a 2-week full show reading just at Music Stand Still. About 6 months after that, there was a 3-week full show reading. Then we went into pre-production, so putting the dance numbers on their feet for 2 weeks, then a 4-week lab where you do the whole show, but in street clothes and just sliding kind of rehearsal props. We did some more dance pre-production, then our out-of-town run in Chicago, and then Broadway shortly thereafter.
And then Broadway. Now, here's my memory of Broadway, because you let me sit in with you. Thank you for that. That was really fun. Now, here's what was interesting. The whole band was under the stage, except for the conductor, but everyone was wearing black, including the drummer, who was in another separate room, not seen at all. And so no one was seen, but everybody was wearing black.
Yeah, I think that is that's kind of Will's credo. He believes that when you put black on, you feel like you're going to work. So Brian Yusufer does a similar thing at Frozen, even though that band is not seen. They're all, I think, in business casual. So it feels like you're going to work. You're showing up to do a great job. I love it. And Sammy, the drummer in question, in a separate room, was also the in-house contractor. So he held everyone to that standard. He needed to wear black the least, but he was the most strict about the dress.
And Sammy, just so we all know, was also the drummer for Kinky Boots, and he came to Broadway through a completely different way than most, which is that he was the drummer for Cyndi Lauper for decades first.
Yeah, he's truly making the trek from real rock star into real musical theater player. He started with Cyndi, then at Kinky Boots, then at Pretty Woman, and now is the drummer for Diana.
Keeping the trend of like the big Hollywood thing turned to Broadway.
Yes, absolutely.
How was the performing of Pretty Woman and then becoming the music director for it?
Pretty Woman was such an experience because the songwriters were coming with nearly no musical theater experience at all. During the workshop process, Jerry Mitchell, the director, kept sending them to see Broadway musicals so that they would have seen Broadway musicals and know the form. And I'll never forget, during the very first reading, the fourth song in the show, which eventually became The Luckiest Girl in the World, which was Vivian's celebration number. It kind of felt like If My Friends Could See Me Now from Sweet Charity. It was originally a duet, like a seduction duet between the characters of Vivian and Edward. And it wasn't working because the song was too seductive, and you got to know her too intimately, like as a temptress, and that was not something that we wanted for the character. So Jerry sat Gary Marshall and Brian and Jim down with different examples of charm songs, the songs that the leading lady sings so that you fall in love with them. So I will never forget Jerry sitting there with the three of them, reading them the lyrics to A Trip to the Library. And so they slowly learned what it was like to write story through song, because those guys are geniuses at hook and lyric and pop songs, the form, the grid. So it was a really interesting collaboration, getting the songwriters and the book writer, who had some knowledge about musical theater but had never written one, to really collaborate and say, like, this is a really great song and it's not a very good theater song yet. The character, she sounds great when she sings it, but she's in the same place emotionally at the beginning of the song that she is at the end of the song. Mm-hmm. We need to watch her take a journey. We need to help her. We need to see what her inner thoughts are. And then, but some of the most successful songs, even at the end of the process, were the songs where the characters just got to like rock out and celebrate. Orfeo had a song in Act 1 called Rodeo Drive, Baby, which was the Vivian's best friend character telling her how great it was going to be to shop on Rodeo Drive. And it was just Orfeo singing like nobody else can in the whole world to like a really intense rock song. And truly, it felt like a rock concert every night, especially in that song, but kind of the whole thing, because the people that were coming were such fans of the movie and were already rooting for the show. And it was very important to Jerry to give those audience members all of the moments that they were expecting from the movie, be it the dress and the jewelry snap and Cinda F. and Rella and all of those things. Audience members would gasp when they happened in the show because they were just like on edge, waiting for it. So it was a really cool, special experience.
That's so special. And I love hearing you talk about Orfeo. I was lucky enough to have done a couple things with her, but the last thing I did with her was at a gala in New York that I played for. And she was there for Pretty Woman. So she was going to perform a song from it. So I saw her in Soundcheck. And let me tell you, Orfeo in Soundcheck is as much a rock star as Orfeo live. It's like the voice that comes out and you're like in a place that has 400 seats and she's basically alone with you. And she just, it was incredible. But here's my little backstage story with Orfeo. We're sharing a dressing room. It was a hotel. We were in a hotel room. So it was her, a couple other artists, and me. So I let the stars dress, and then I go last, in the bathroom, put on my black dress, which had a zipper in the back. And sure enough, I tried to go up, and when it went up, it just opened up. The whole zipper was closed, but it opened up, and I'm like, I'm performing and my hair does not cover the whole zipper. Like I can't, what am I going to do? So I'm just kind of like not speaking, just kind of trying to, I take it off, try to fix it, whatever. Or Faye's like, are you okay there? What's going on? I'm like, my dress, the zipper. And she's like, oh, where I come from, my mom always said, you need to use soap. If you just soap up the zipper, it can go back down and go back up. And she had a whole like solution for zippers that was brilliant and did work. So
really?
Our Faye saved me. But it was one of those, she's like, where I'm from, my mama said she had it right up, ready to go. So that's my Orphe story. I love the woman.
I mean, she truly nobody sings like Orphe, and she never marks. Is physically incapable of giving anything less than 100%. And she's also really fun on stage because you kind of never know what she's going to do. The end of her big song was a huge like cadenza riff, whatever you call it, and it sort of got into a groove where she would do Rodeo Drive. But one day, so you kind of knew to expect that she's going to go down the scale and then she's going to go up, and then you look for her and we cut off together. One day, without consulting me or truly anyone in the building, she just sang Rodeo Drive and held it out, and I was like, oh, she's going to hold it out and then go down the scale and then go up the scale. But she just held a full belted F sharp until she decided that she was done and gave her button. And then I was like, well, I guess we're done too.
Live theater. Yes. Now tell me about We Are the Tigers. So I music directed it. And when you called me to do this, I was so excited and then realized it was a horror musical. I mean, who in the world gets to say they've done a horror musical?
It's true. I think there are only two. There's Evil Dead and then We Are the Tigers. It's like a really cool, special, like teen comedy hybrid. Like imagine Scream, but as a musical. Preston Max Allen started writing it when he was in high school at age 17 or something. I got brought on as kind of a ranger music director through the workshop process a couple years ago. Went through a couple rounds of development. And as these things happen, just like all of a sudden the stars aligned and there was a producer and there was a director and there was a theater and all of a sudden this thing we had kind of been doing in garages and basements was like going to happen off Broadway, and it all happened like very quickly. So I was doing Pretty Woman at the time. So we brought on Gerald Queen.
Oh, I forgot about that nickname.
Oh, I will never forget that.
Gerald Queen.
Gerald Queen. Mimi still calls you that whenever she refers to you. Yeah, it was a really special time and really fast and still done on kind of a shoestring bootstraps budget. So I remember that the producer said, you can have a music director, but she can't join on the first day of rehearsal. So I was the de facto music director for a couple weeks, even though I was having to arrange and copy and kind of pull the band together and also be in rehearsal. It was a crazy, crazy time. Thank goodness that Geraldine came along.
I was so happy. I mean, that was such a happy process.
It really was. It was like actresses that really liked each other, a band that really liked each other.
Oh, yes.
And you were all kind of crammed into such tight quarters.
What do you mean? Oh, goodness. Yes, that was small.
Yeah, Geraldine and the bassist were on one loft, stage right, just staring directly at each other.
Joe Wallace, who's in the group. Hello,
yes,
Joe.
Yes, what's up, Joe?
Who's a great piano tuner, everyone.
Oh, I didn't know that.
He became a piano tuner during the run. Maybe we traumatized him. Maybe that's what happened. Maybe I was like, I have to be next to Gerald Queen this close. I'd rather change careers. Yes, but we talked about it. He was like, I'm kind of looking into this piano tuning thing I can do. And then he signed on while we were running. Then he was like, okay, I'm coming for my first class as a piano tuner. And then here he is becoming the #1 called piano tuner in the city.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And new dad.
And a new dad.
Yeah. Especially the actors, equity has all of these rules about how much desk space you get and how many people you can share a dressing room with, and all of them weren't squeezed. The rules weren't squeezed or broken, rather. They were bent a little. They had to like each other because they were in such tight quarters.
Yeah, they had like that 6 per room.
Yeah.
It was crazy.
It was really crazy, but it felt so cool and it felt edgy. The theater was on in the East Village. When you think off Broadway, you kind of think still Midtown, 42nd Street, but like this horror vibe felt grungy. And because it was on St. Mark's Place, there were such like characters kind of always in and out of the theater. And the theater was shared with the American Gangster Museum.
Oh, yes. I forgot about that.
Used to be a Prohibition speakeasy. So the setting was great. The music is amazing. And it was so funny. It was a horror comedy that it really resonated. It was such a cool, special
That's
time.
what made it so fun, was that from day to day, you didn't know the reaction from the audience, because on the horror scenes, you'd have those audiences who are clued into the horror genre, who would laugh because to them it's something they expected so much that they're like, this is hilarious. That's exactly what we thought would happen. It's well done. And so they would just laugh and like go collectively. And then you'd have those audiences where people would just not be used to the horror genre, who would be completely terrified, climbing on their partner, like so scared. And sometimes you'd have those mixed audiences where you kind of have like both audiences. And that made it so fun for us because it was always a strong reaction. It was always like, it drew them out as audience members, but you never know in what kind of way.
Right. And it's also a whodunit. So, not to give it away, but the people do die in the musical. It becomes a whodunit, and then there's a big confession song at the end. And I remember different audiences would know, or they wouldn't know, or they'd be surprised. And then when we recorded the album, if you listen to the album, there's a spoiler track right before the big confession song of someone saying, if you don't want it spoiled. I was very heavily influenced by the Dirty Rotten Scoundrels album when we put that little spoiler in, or the spoiler alert. Oh, right.
That cast album, I love it. I mean, I can't believe I got to be a part of it. It is such a great album. I don't know that I'm allowed to say that, but I love it. Go check it out. Tell me, everyone, what you think of it.
Oh, there's such good workout jams too.
Yeah. Well, we love it so much. We decided to do something different, you guys. We're going to actually sing a little bit of the show for you guys. I know it was my idea. I'm terrified. I don't know why I do this myself. So I'm going to move and get to my piano. And that's going to be great.
Ooh, a tour of Geraldine's apartment.
That sounded like something special. So let's see. I've got to turn on I'm going to try. So we just had a meetup this afternoon and JP Mayer mentioned how much he hates when people send videos and you can't see the piano. But I genuinely, JP, don't see how I can sing this song and you can see my piano and my face. So I'm sorry, JP, for disappointing you with this setup. So I'm going to do the first verse and chorus because obviously we're in confinement. We can't do it at the same time. But then we're going to have Patrick do the second verse and chorus, and that's going to be fun. All right, can you hear me? Does the volume work?
Yeah.
All right. Back to bleacher, back to school, back to walking through my old routine. And all the teachers play it cool while they tiptoe around saying the wrong thing. I remember plans we had and think that they're still on. And for a second I am fine, then I remember that you're gone. Now all your promises are lies you couldn't keep. Sometimes I call your voicemail just to hear you speak. 'Cause you aren't here, I miss you. Tell me, when will you come home? I'm breathing, I'm alive, but I'm alone. But all my friends say that it will be okay, because it has to, because it has to, and I just have to do the thing they want me to, because I have to, because I have to move on.
Someone tell the colleges you're dead and you're not going. You're the only person in the world I want to see. And what about your birthdays and your best friends and all the things that you're supposed to be? Now if I say I'm fine enough, then I'll believe it. And if I block your voice out, I'll stay right on track. Now the counselor might dismiss me if I promise I know you're not coming back. But all my friends say that it will be okay, because it has to, because it has to. And I just have to do the things they want me to, because I have to, because I have to move on.
Woo! Yes! That was so fun. Patrick, by the way, everyone, this was not planned. Like, this happened the 2 minutes before we went live. So, Patrick,
Yes.
thank you
You are
for
welcome.
making it happen. That was so fun. I love this score. I loved working with you. So it's such a pleasure catching up with you and seeing you and hanging out.
And
So thank you.
And thank you so much for what you're doing for the Theater Music Directors group.
My pleasure.
Of course.
Thank you so much for being with us. Bye, Patrick. Bye, everyone. See
Bye.
you tomorrow for another
Bye,
live.
guys.
Bye.